Bill, talk me through the ZTE Corp case and why the US has banned US manufacturers from supplying anything to the Chinese company.
The ZTE was trying to evade US export control rules and set up a whole series of shell companies to mask the sales of these products to Iran. And the products, the telephones in question, contained a lot of high-tech parts that came from the United States. They discovered this because they found memos as to how to set up the scheme to evade U.S. export control rules. It was a smoking gun. It was so bad that the Commerce Department simply couldn't ignore it. So what they did was they had a meeting of all the agencies and then put them on a list which requires that every company that supplies products to ZTE get an export license with the presumption that it'll be denied. ZTE has a major problem right now.
What can ZTE Corp tell us about the way many companies approach international trade?
Part of the problem in China is that Chinese companies don't realize they've grown up, and they use what is called homen, which in Chinese means backdoor. And they try to go through different countries to come into the United States, or try to get around export control companies by setting up shell companies. And part of the problem, the reason for this, is that under Chinese law, U.S. judgments are not enforceable in China. So many Chinese companies think they can just sit back in China and nobody can touch them. And the problem is they have Hong Kong bank accounts, they have subsidiaries all over the world, and now these companies can be touched.
But how does the Chinese government view these practices?
I think the Chinese government will try to defend its Chinese companies. But, you know, what's like the ZTE memo, I don't think there's much the Chinese government can say. Now, they can rail against it and scream protectionism and stuff like that. But when you look at the memo, it's pretty bad. The Chinese government itself, if they had discovered such a memo from a U.S. company, would not tolerate it.
And could this possibly spark a trade war between the two countries moving forwards?
I don't think ZTE by itself is going to spark a trade war. Frankly, again, this is less protectionist as it is a specific, almost like a law enforcement issue. They discovered this memo. But where you can see much more of the trade war is especially when you bring dumping and countervailing duty, other trade actions. If Trump does what he says he's going to do, which is put up 45% tariffs on all products coming from China, the Chinese will react. And we've got about $200 billion in exports from the United States to China that nobody wants to talk about. The largest export target for Washington State is China, with $20 billion in exports to that country. And so China could definitely cut off the imports coming in from the United States, and that would hurt U.S. companies. One of the things you got to understand, and this is probably the problem in the United States, they're used to dealing with Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. Those countries are dependent upon the United States for their national security. When the United States throws a trade rock at Japan or Taiwan and South Korea, they don't react. China is not dependent upon the United States for its national security. So if you throw a trade rock at China, expect one to come back.
Thanks for watching. For more videos from the Voice of the Market, please subscribe.